Aesop's Fable EP160, title, The Squirrel Who Asked Questions. Scene 1, The Confusing Tale. In the heart of a dense forest, there lived a curious squirrel named Nibbles. Nibbles loved listening to stories, especially those told by the wise old owl, Oliver, who knew everything about the forest and beyond. One evening, as the sun began to set, Nibbles and his friends gathered around Oliver to hear one of his famous tales. Oliver began to weave a complex story about a magical tree that granted wishes, but only to those who understood its ancient riddle. As Oliver spoke, the other animals listened intently, nodding along, but Nibbles quickly found himself lost in the details. The story was full of tricky twists and words he didn't quite understand. Nibbles felt embarrassed to ask questions. He didn't want to seem foolish in front of his friends, so he stayed quiet, hoping that he would somehow catch on. But the more Oliver talked, the more confused Nibbles became. Scene 2, The Missed Message After the story ended, the other animals started discussing what they had heard, excitedly planning how they might find the magical tree and solve its riddle. Nibbles, however, stayed silent, feeling frustrated. He had missed the key parts of the story and didn't understand what everyone was talking about. As his friends talked about their plans, Nibbles tried to piece together the story, but without the full picture, everything seemed jumbled and unclear. He realized that while everyone else was ready to start the adventure, he was stuck with more questions than answers. Finally, feeling overwhelmed, Nibbles decided to leave the group and wander off by himself. He felt embarrassed for not understanding and even more so for not asking questions when he had the chance. Scene 3, The Courage to Ask As Nibbles walked through the forest, he bumped into Oliver, who was perched on a low branch, watching the evening sky. "Why the long face, Nibbles?" asked Oliver, his eyes twinkling with curiosity. Nibbles hesitated before admitting, "I didn't understand the story you told earlier. It was too complicated, and now I feel left out because everyone else seems to get it." Oliver nodded thoughtfully. "Stories can be complex, Nibbles, and it's okay not to understand everything right away. But that's why it's important to ask questions. Asking questions is how we learn and gain a deeper understanding." Nibbles looked up at Oliver, feeling a bit more hopeful. "But what if my questions are silly? What if everyone else already knows the answers?" "There's no such thing as a silly question, Nibbles," Oliver replied kindly. "Every question you ask brings you closer to understanding. Even the wisest of us started by asking questions. And sometimes, your questions might help others who are also confused but too afraid to ask." Scene 4, The Power of Understanding Determined to understand the story, Nibbles returned to the group. This time, he bravely raised his paw and asked Oliver if he could go over the parts of the story he didn't understand. At first, the other animals were surprised, but then they realized that they, too, had questions about the story. As Nibbles asked his questions, Oliver patiently explained the tricky parts, and soon the entire group began to understand the story better. Nibbles asked about the magical tree, the riddle, and how the wishes were granted, and Oliver clarified each point. By the end of the discussion, not only did Nibbles understand the story, but so did all of his friends. They all thanked Nibbles for having the courage to ask questions, which helped everyone learn more. From that day on, Nibbles became known as the squirrel who wasn't afraid to ask questions. he discovered that asking questions not only helped him understand better but also enriched the learning experience for everyone around him. Moral of the story: asking questions is an important part of learning. Don't be afraid to seek clarity, because understanding comes from the courage to ask and the willingness to learn.